Welcome back. Today we are going to be doing a collaboration with Otterface, and to make sure that she is truly represented in her natural form, we're going to be using this image of her, the appropriate image of her in her tenter cage. Together we are going to be responding to an old video because she sent it to me months ago and I forgot to do it. The subject of the video is women in film.
Hey, so here's a question for you. Why aren't there more women in film?
Oh, is it because women choose not to go into those roles? Is it because they were repeatedly told that the film industry is a sausage party and that it's difficult to be a woman in film? Is it because people like you are making Hollywood and the film industry a place where it seemed like a place where women couldn't succeed and a place that just isn't welcome to them? So then maybe they might not bother in the first place. We don't need more women in film. We don't need more men in film. We don't need more white people or black people or Hispanic people or disabled people in film. All we need are just those who are visionaries, who have great ideas, and great ideas don't have genders, they don't have skin colours, they don't have sexual orientations, they don't have anything like that. We just need visionaries, ideas, more storytellers, and more people who can bring their ideas to the big screen. I don't care if you're black, or if you're a woman, if you're Hispanic, if you're disabled, or whatever else you are. If you are good at making films, if you are good at writing stories, then Hollywood, the film industry, any industry that's creative is for you.
I would like to expand on this a tad further and include the question, which genres? If you're saying it as a blanket assessment, based on the current stats, there are no real issues. In some genres of movies there are less women, yes, and in some other genres there are less men. It's all about character after all, isn't it? And telling a story. You know this. And in some instances, for example, certain types of action films that appeal more to men than women, you're not going to have as many women unless they're playing the love interest trope.
Or in the media or in the creative industries in general.
It depends on the person though. Some areas of the creative industry appeals to certain people in general.
I'm going to focus on film for this because it's what I'm most passionate about.
Okay, cool. Same here.
I'm more into sandwiches, but whatever. Continue.
It may seem pretty obvious, but it's best to point it out. I am not a woman in film.
So what? That doesn't mean you cannot have an opinion on the matter.
Another point I can quite easily expand upon, while it's okay for men not to have a voice when it comes to women's issues, it's totally okay for women to talk about men's masculinity, because that makes sense.
Barely a man in film. What's that supposed to mean?
You were saying that you're barely a man in film. I mean, it's a funny little banter thing that I'd imagine people like you tend to oppose, but seem to excuse when it's your friends doing it, I guess. But hey, self-deprecating jokes are pretty good, I guess.
Not a woman in film, that may be true, but you know who is? Jodie Foster. And I got to speak to her recently. She's got a new film coming out called Money Monster. I really enjoyed it, and she directed it.
Wow. You're saying that as if it's an amazing feat. Wow, a woman directed a film. Holy shit, wow. Make sure you give her a medal on my behalf. Maybe I was looking into it too much, but that really sounded quite patronising there, mate.
I brought this topic up with her, so throughout the video, I'm going to be cutting in her opinions along with my point of view on it all. Let's start this video off with some good old-fashioned facts. According to an article that was in The Guardian, which I trust more than, let's say, the Daily Mail.
I would trust my nephew's poop more than I would The Guardian to provide me with facts.
Ah, yeah, The Guardian, the same paper that posted these gems of articles.
Now, Otterface. No need for such high levels of condescension. He is, after all, not one of those pesky skeptics, so I doubt he'd want to provide a decent source for this, to validate his arguments, instead of using weak arguments that are influenced by such a heavily left-leaning, unapologetic piece of tripe, like The Guardian.
Last year, 2015, only 1/5 of film workers were female. That's mental.
No, that's just the consequence of living in a free society, mate.
When I originally stumbled across this video, this was the exact arguments that made me think, ooh, I know, I'll send it to Otterface. Maybe we'll collaborate on it, and I totally won't forget about it for 9 months. Maybe 11, actually.
I think about 50% of people on the planet are female, so why is it only a fifth of women are in the film industry in the UK?
That has, and will always be, the single shittest argument to make for equal representation in employment.
You can use that logic on anything with women-dominated areas. I think about 50% of people on the planet are men, so why aren't they,
Because women are less interested in filmmaking? I don't think that's the case at all.
I don't think it's that women are less interested in filmmaking in general. However, I do think that women are probably less interested in the technical aspects of filmmaking. For example, the lighting department, special effects, stunts, cinematography, editing and film directing. Nothing wrong with that, of course. That's just how it is. That's just the consequences of living in a free society where people can choose their paths in life.
What we need to do as a society is evolve to the point where we are able to determine the jobs of our next generation before they're even born. How very Krypton.
Well, there's a great discussion about women in directing. I'm glad there's a discussion because there never was in the last 50 years that I've worked in the film business.
Well, there's a discussion, and that's fine, have that discussion, but all I'm really hearing from these discussions is really quite negative. The sexism, maybe that sexism might be linked to why this is happening, misogyny, people are afraid of a woman director, and all that shit, and so on. Plus, I don't really see that many female directors and actresses that have made it really going out of their way to help more female directors and actresses, unless, of course, I'm looking in the wrong places, of course, but sometimes, I mean, conspiracy theory hat, I assume that the reason why they don't actually approach female directors and actresses is because they're probably worried that those up-and-coming female directors and actresses are going to steal their jobs. Nature measures, you know, that stuff.
There wasn't any discussion of it at all.
Insane that only one woman has won an Academy Award for director.
That's true. That's
insane.
true.
So?
If there's a small amount of women being directors, if the percent of women being directors is really low, then it would make sense that an even smaller amount of those would actually go on to win Academy Awards for Best Director, don't you think? But if you look at every single director who's won the awards, it's because they've created amazing works of art that deserve awards. The fact that they were men had nothing to do with why they got the award. Plenty of men lose awards, you know.
What you really need to do is create a Women's Academy Awards, but while having that solely for females, also allow them to still retain their votes in the other Academy Awards that feature men, just to elevate them as best as possible.
And very few nominations. Mm-hmm. It's complicated. It's a very complicated issue about why women are not in mainstream end of filmmaking.
It's really not. It boils down to two simple words. No, not sexual harassment. Personal choice.
No, it's just that women just don't tend to go for those jobs within the film industry if you're talking about directing here. You're not going to get anywhere or make any change if you don't even put your foot in the door in the first place. Yes, that is true, only one female director has won an Academy Award for Best Director, and that was Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker. However, there were also film directors who were still nominated for awards, those being, I'm going to mess up these names here, but it was Lena Wertmuller for Seven Beauties, Jane Campion for The Piano, Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation for some stupid reason. Yes, they didn't win, however, those women are examples of women who had made it into the industry and got as far as being nominated for one of the biggest awards in filmmaking. Surely that should tell any promising female film director that, in fact, if they work hard enough, they can do it. For me, anyway, I see these conversations translated as, there is a lack of women here, which means the film industry is sexist. I mean, and how the hell are you going to bring anyone into the film industry while using that kind of rhetoric? I actually kind of agree with a lot what Jodie Foster has to say, more than you really. Like, just get out there, even if you have a shitty little camcorder or you just have your iPhone to make your films, as long as you've got that credit as a director, that's a film directed by you. Keep improving, keep telling stories, keep getting yourself into places, into competitions, networking, keep contacts, get business cards, they are really fucking useful, always have one handy, get a LinkedIn profile, don't let anyone tell you it's harder for you because you're a woman or you're black or Hispanic or just non-white, as everyone else seems to be presenting it as. I don't want to risk people seeing shit like this and then getting put off the industry, because you could have put off people who could have been the next big visionaries in film.
Some of it is really about where we are at. You know, we're at a time where mostly Hollywood movies are superhero movies, and they're making a big bet on that.
Could it be that superhero films appeal more to a male audience therefore that's why they may have more female directors. I mean, a lot of these directors are also known to be great fans of the lore behind these superheroes. Could it possibly be that, do you think?
I would expand upon this and mention that Wonder Woman came out this year and was a huge success. That had nothing to do with empowering women as to why it was successful, and more because the story was so well written, unlike previous films in the DC universe. Sorry, DCEU. Whereas Marvel has mostly male heroes, and unfortunately there isn't one that stands out that could be successful on its own just yet. And yes, these films appeal to a huge male audience, which is why SJW Marvel is doing such a fantastic job killing its comic books, which is where most of the lore comes from. Marvel, get your acting gear, you fucking idiots. Stop killing the comics.
I mean, of course, women can like these things as well, but oftentimes it's the women that tend to be the ones that demonize people for liking comics and superhero-related films. And do you think that might be at least one or several of the reasons why female directors are less likely to direct superhero films?
But I will say, great narrative and stories and characters are mostly on cable and television now, and that's really where there's a lot of women directors.
I agree there. It's why I don't really watch films and I prefer TV shows, because there's a lot more room for great narrative stories and characters.
Which is also where Marvel has done quite well, with the introduction of Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. Arguably, Iron Fist is the weakest, but I think with Defenders being essentially Iron Fist 2.0, it develops the petulant character more, and I actually am looking forward to a second season of Iron Fist. But to mention Jessica Jones, they wrote the story well, they introduced Kilgrave early, really made Jessica show a lot of different sides to her character, which appealed to a lot of people.
Just going by my own experiences, from the shoots that I've been on, I have and still work with female camera assistants, female directors, female producers.
Careful, Jack. Your virtue signal is showing.
And I've worked on sets too. One of them was a Warner Brothers set, and there were female assistant directors, female puppeteers, female set designers, female editors who were working on set, and female producers, female prop makers, and no one cried about women in film, at least not that I saw anyway. They were all actually good friends with each other, enjoying working with each other, and just focusing on making a good film.
So it's not that women aren't interested in it, it's just that in the actual film industry, the people who are employing the people, for some reason, aren't hiring women.
It might be down to the fact that a lot of them have their own crew around with them and keep them on for many different projects, perhaps which is often why people may find it difficult to get onto crews in big studios. It might be down to the fact that coincidentally the best people for the job were mostly men, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. If 100% of a field was just men who were fully qualified for that job, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. If 100% of a field was just women who were fully qualified for the job, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. I don't think it's down to the film industry being sexist. I think that's just an excuse, just like people use religion as an excuse to do things, or when people use their race as an excuse for their shitty life choices. If you want the job, go for it. No one is stopping you. And if someone fucker is trying to fill you up, if some executive is trying to do that to you, then report that shit. Report people like that. Because from my experience on sets, shit like that does not fly well. All the people I've met on sets have all been terribly nice people who were more focused on creating a film than whatever gender people were.
Yeah, and also considering how current employment is, with things like affirmative action still in existence, I would take this a little further and say that you using the excuse of companies not hiring people based on their gender is disingenuous of you, and an assumption which is basically a fucked up choice.
I mean, maybe it's not that, maybe it's not that women aren't getting hired, but more that women aren't applying for it.
Yes, exactly.
Why would that be?
Could it be that they may not be applying because they're being told that the film industry isn't for them? Could it be that they may not be applying because they're being told that there's a lack of women in the industry and it's down to sexism? It's similar to how people demonize the STEM fields as being sexist and encourage people to go into gender studies, and then they'll go off and spend their time in gender studies complaining that there aren't enough women in STEM, thus contributing to the problem further.
Last year I got to go to a screening of the latest Mission Impossible film, and afterwards the producers came out and did a Q&A. Somebody directly asked the producer what he was doing specifically to make it more possible for women to get jobs within the film industry. What he said was really interesting. He said he goes to film schools all the time.
And he goes in and he says that only white men are allowed, right? No black guys, no black women, and no chicks, just white dicks, okay? That's all I want here. That's what he said, right? That's what he said, yeah?
Always leaves his card there and says, call me. And you know who calls him? White men.
White men.
Why is that a problem, Jack? Why is the fact that they are white men a problem? Just replace the word white with black and you will be called a racist by a lot of people, and rightly so. And just replace the word men with women and you'd also be called a sexist, and rightly so. But anyway, did it say on the card, white men only? Did it say no chicks, only dicks? No, it didn't, probably. That man left his card for anyone to take, and it was just a mere coincidence that only white men called. Of course, though, I have to take you at your word. For all I know, some women might have called the guy as well. But if you genuinely want a career in the film industry, you should be grabbing that card and calling the guy the second he leaves the bloody room, and the second you get that card. This is a fucking Hollywood producer giving his card away, meaning he could help you in your career. So either someone is telling women just not to take opportunities, and therefore women will be missing out on opportunities, or these women are just too lazy and couldn't be bothered to do it, or they weren't that passionate enough about it in the first place. I know if I was in that room, I'd be rushing to get that card. I'd be killing people. Holy crap, it's a fucking Hollywood producer, man.
You're not very good at subtlety, are you? It's quite astonishing how surprised you were when you said white men, and how aggressive you felt the need to say it, as if somehow that was a coherent point. Gender and race of the person going for a job should never matter. It should be totally blind. Now, that does run the risk that in an employment workforce you're not going to know who's going to get the job. But it's not meant to be equal outcome, it's supposed to be equal opportunity. The card placed on the table made it so that there was an equal opportunity presented.
Jack, are you saying that women need to work harder and it's their fault? No, shut up slightly further away, Jack. Have you been on Tumblr?
Everyone has to work harder. Everyone does. And if you aren't taking the card, if you aren't taking the time to make your own stuff, if you aren't putting the hours in to hone your craft, if you aren't networking, then yes, you will have a harder time in Hollywood and the film industry. That goes for both men and women. Women are not blocked from doing anything.
I'm obviously not saying it's the fault of women that there isn't more women in the film industry.
Not entirely the fault of all women, but it might be the fault of those who seem to dress up the film industry as something that only appeals to a certain demographic. It also might be the fault of women who live in a free society and therefore can do whatever they like, and this is just the consequences of it. If you want to do anything otherwise, then you're going to have to force women into these positions who may not even be good at the job, and that is not a free society where you force people to work in jobs that they don't want to do.
What I'm saying is that if you want to get into this industry, it's incredibly difficult and you need to work harder than anybody else will.
Absolutely. I would also add that because of how you framed your earlier comments with regards to this, so giving context, you're implying that girls have to work extra hard, harder than men to get noticed to get somewhere. That's not how you should do this. That is, like I stated earlier with how you present your information, it is disingenuous, it is intellectually dishonest. And yes, you do have some lived experience, Mr. Jack. But as I've stated before, in a previous video I did on you, your perceptions are skewed and filled with misinformation, and in this instance, you're trying to paint some with a bad brush and portray a group as a victim of some heinous crime that isn't actually a heinous crime at all.
I agree there.
A great man named Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says, if you want to make it, you have to work harder than you know your competition will. And that goes for anything, not just the film industry.
Yep, that's good advice. And obviously those people in those film schools who didn't take the card, didn't want it enough, and didn't attempt to work harder than their competition, who may have taken the card and called the guy.
Jack, The Rock also said this.
Advice that you would give to young females who want to be directors or writers or just anything creative?
Here's mine. Don't listen to anyone else, unless of course they're giving you constructive criticism. Don't get shit from anyone. Fuck people who say you can't do something because you're a girl. Kick ass, keep creating, make movies, keep writing, keep yourself active on big sets and small ones as well. Keep contacting people who may be able to help you, and more importantly, don't give up.
And I, like Otterface, have advice of my own to share with you. If you want to make it, but feel like it's too much hard work to do so, I hear playing the victim is quite lucrative. It not only enhances your social media presence, but allows you to obtain shekels through things like Patreon, Bitcoin, PayPal. So if Hollywood isn't for you, be a victim. Claim you're oppressed.
You know, I just think it's just get in there and get as much experience as possible and make mistakes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes! This is exactly what I want to hear. Positive encouragement. Don't keep harping on that women are this percentage of the horror stories in Hollywood that most likely rarely happened or they're greatly exaggerated. Don't keep making it seem like the film industry isn't a place for anyone who isn't a white straight male. Instead, encouragement. Yes, Jodie Foster.
I also encourage people to just be themselves and to not try to emulate everybody else and try to be the next Tarantino or the next Martin Scorsese.
I agree, but there's nothing wrong with being inspired by their styles and their work in order to create your own.
Yeah, I tried that. Ended up getting pigeonholed as a skeptic clone. cry.
Really try to talk about what's meaningful for you from your perspective.
I agree.
And using my own experiences, when I was writing for the Jack and Dean series, there's a female character in it, played by Jessica Hines, called Marv. Now, the people writing the Jack and Dean series were obviously me and Dean, but also our friend Paul Neefsey. That's 3 dudes writing a female character.
So what? You don't have to be a woman in order to create a good female character. Like, wouldn't it be sexist to even suggest that because you're a man, you cannot write a female character and vice versa? Wouldn't it be called sexist if a female friend of yours created a male character and then a man approached her and said, she can't write that because she's a woman writing a male character? You would call that sexist, right? And you'd be right. So why the double standard? The only way I can meet you halfway is if your character, I guess, has specific qualities about it that only, like, a woman can possibly understand or whatever. Maybe she has a stammer or whatever, maybe she has a disability, or maybe she comes from a different background. Then that would be understandable to get a second opinion on it. Like, but here are some amazing female characters who were created by men. If you are a good writer, you will write good characters regardless of gender. And there are plenty of female writers who have written some amazing male characters, like J.K. Rowling with Snape, Harry Potter, Remus Lupin, and Albert Dumbledore, Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, or Adam if you want to be picky, Agatha Christie with Poirot, Heathcliff with Emily Bronte, Jane Austen with Mr. Darcy, Mr. Bingley, and Mr. Wickham, Harper Lee with Atticus Finch and Boo Radley, and so on and so forth. If you think that being 3 guys writing a female character is a problem, then I hope you also have a problem with 3 girls writing a male character. Because honestly, if you don't, then you're going to have to say it's okay for girls to do something, but not okay for boys to do it. And guess what that's called?
That was such an incredibly long answer. Thank you, Otterface, for that. I thoroughly enjoyed editing it. Now, to just ask a very simple and basic question to Jack. If it is such an issue that 3 dudes, although I would question whether or not you're a dude, are writing a female character and there's an issue with that, surely it's down to you, since it's your show, to hire a female writer or hire 3 female writers to get the correct amount of representation for that one female character.
One of the things that I do as a director, and I think all the women filmmakers that I know do, is we inhabit all the characters. So we get inside their bodies and we go, what?
Do you think some woman may not want to join the film industry if women can make comments like that and you laugh? I mean, I know there's definitely women out there who would use the same argument, like, a little bit disrespectful, Jack, but that's just me being picky. But I don't think it's a problem, but I'm sure you would have a problem with a guy, sniggering at, like, the comments she made, but, whatever, I don't have access to your mind, mate.
How are we like them, and what is their relationship with their mother? Because my relationship with my mother is this. Interestingly, lots of male directors don't do that with women.
I'd like to see some examples of male characters who can't possibly do that or don't do that. I mean, Pedro Almodovar, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, J.J. Abrams, to name a few, who are brilliant directors who have written some amazing female characters. I'd love to know what male directors you're talking about so I can either agree with you or disagree with you.
Right.
It's just not something they're taught to do.
And women just are. Like, not every man is the same, Like, aren't you also appealing to the stereotype we have about women that they're emotional and, like, talk about feelings? And with women, with female directors, there must be, like, a greater emphasis on, like, feelings and romantic stuff and all that shit. Isn't that kind of playing into the stereotype that I'm guessing they're trying to run away from?
I don't know how to get into a female character and look out her eyes and see how she feels the world.
Then how can you explain the female characters that I've mentioned, of whom I'm sure you admire for them being badass women? Those who were created by men, like, were they the exceptions or did they fail? I don't know.
And so you tend to get a lot of stereotypes, and you just get very, traditional gender specific stuff.
Who are you talking about, Jodie? And even so, what is wrong with creating a female character that appeals to the traditional female stereotypes? I hope you've never made a character who's a male that has appealed to any traditional male stereotypes.
When we were developing that character, we brought a friend of ours in called Andrea Valls, who's an actress, who ended up actually playing another character in the series. She sat down with us for a little while, she riffed some stuff with me and Dean, she helped develop who the character of Marv really was and what she wanted and what she strived for, what her weaknesses was, where she came from.
All this does is tell me how incredibly weak you are at writing strong or any kind of female character. Really puts the pressure on you to learn from these kind of mistakes.
Not every female character is required to have a woman present in the creation of that character. It really doesn't matter. Like, there's plenty of amazing female characters that have been made without the help of real women, I guess. If you are good at creating good, full and wholesome characters, then you'll have no problem creating them, regardless of their gender.
It's what Jodie Foster was saying, it helped us get inside that character and understand her perspectives on the world.
And in doing so managed to make you look like an inept bellend for not being able to write one single character, that you could have done some decent research into yourself, but you decided to take the easy route out by getting an actress to help you. Really striving for career success, huh?
And this is a silly 10-minute, 6-episode comedy series. And what I mean by that is, if we can make the effort to try and round out our female characters, then why can't Hollywood?
No offense, but I really don't think you can compare your comedy series to Hollywood. I think with Hollywood, they're a bit more concerned with money and getting people going to see their movies. That's why sequels tend to be really popular. I mean, with your comedy series, with smaller projects in general, it's a little different. I'm not insulting your comedy series. I'm sure it's brilliant. I hope it's incredibly successful. But it's a little different, don't you think? But aside from that, like I've mentioned before, there are plenty of male directors who do make amazing, well-rounded female characters. Tarantino, Miyazaki, Almodovar, Anderson, Cameron, Spielberg, Whedon, Abrams. They are there. The amazing female characters are there who have been created by men. I mean, personally, I don't see why their gender makes them so important. I think they're just amazing characters, really, and they just happen to be women. I mean, but here's my advice if you want to make strong female characters. If it's so important to you to make these strong female characters, if making strong female characters is such a big thing to do, here's my advice. If you want to take my advice, not that you need it, but here's advice. Make the character in the story, just make it, then make them female. That's it. No. The fact that they're female has very, very rarely anything to do with what's going on in the movie, typically. And if you want people to take female characters seriously, if you don't think people take female characters seriously, if that's your goal, if you want to make people take them seriously, then stop making their gender so important. Unless, of course, their gender is, in fact, integral to the plot somehow. But at the end of the day, let's focus on great narrative and stories and characters. End of.
What I think is really interesting about everything that Jodie Foster is saying is that it could be applied to either gender. So it seems to me that it doesn't matter what gender you are.
Definitely seems like the gender of the director did in fact matter to her anyway, but whatever. However, I do agree with that. It doesn't matter whatever gender you are. If you are a man, you can create good female characters. If you're a female, you can create good male characters, and so on and so forth.
That you should be able to make films regardless of whether or not you have a penis or a vagina.
I have to ask a very important question, Jack. Who on earth is telling you that somebody's genitalia is what is stopping them from succeeding in the film industry?
If I go to any film school, it's gonna say no girl. There's gonna be things that say no girls allowed, right? Maybe I'm taking your words too literally. I mean, I agree. You should be able to make films regardless of sex organs. However, I don't see where women are being told not to make films. I mean, it just happens that more men are directors. That doesn't mean therefore women aren't allowed. I mean, I'm repeating myself here, but that's just how things work in a free society. Some jobs have more men in their industries than women, and some jobs have more women than men. That's just how it is.
Dumb enough and idealistic enough to really believe in talent, and that talent will always outweigh everything else.
Talent is still out there, although I do think that these conversations that make it seem like women aren't allowed to become directors aren't actually going to bring in the talent, because the talent may see that, and if they are easily manipulated like that, might not even bother. However, hopefully they won't do that. Like, if you want a goal, if you want to get to where no amount of words or any of that will stop you. Like, if you're determined, you won't give a fuck what anyone says.
Just tell stories, and you can tell them on your iPhone, and you can tell them in a little cardboard box, and ultimately, if you're saying something meaningful and true, it will find its way.
Exactly. Now, Jack goes on and does some weird game with her, and there wasn't any point talking about it, but now, the thing with Jack. Thing with you, Jack. I do believe that there are good intentions here. However, I do not think that there is a problem with women in film. They're just people who got there because they worked hard at it, they succeeded, they failed, they networked, they did everything they could to succeed. Some of them, those are women, but in a free society, there's going to be consequences. In a free society where personal choice is allowed, there are going to be areas that are dominated by a certain demographic, and that's okay. I don't see anyone freaking out that nursing is a female-dominated area because that's a result of personal choice. More women than men choose to be nurses. I also don't freak out when there's more men in STEM than women because women just choose not to be in those fields. Or they got told by feminists that the STEM fields are full of sexist men with t-shirts with naked ladies on and encourage them to go to the gender studies department instead, thus contributing to the problem that they're moaning about. I think you're a nice guy, Jack. I really do. I'm sure I could be friends with you in real life, and I wish you all the success in the world in your film career. However, I think these gender policy discussions in the film industry aren't really helpful because they seem to present the industry as something that doesn't allow women into certain roles or doesn't allow them to make films because they're women, and that women are just going to get felt up or something, or you know, all these horror stories about women getting felt up by producers. But, you know, since the argument is there anyway, since the discussion is there anyway, and if I had to contribute to it, then this is how I would approach it. I wouldn't go on about female directors versus male directors. I wouldn't talk about that. Instead, I would spend my time telling female directors or female whatever in the industry to come along and do it. Come and have a go. Yeah, in the past, this has happened, but this is now. I hate to use the current year argument.
Current year.
And the future is still unwritten. Maybe if women would focus more on making sandwiches instead of goddamn films, we wouldn't be in this damn problem, right? Right? Anyway, thanks so much. If you agree or disagree, please drop a comment there. Please help me, Omegon is keeping me
Otterface talks too much. I think I should punish her in some way for that. Anyway, I happen to agree with the advice given by Otterface, and if you want to, by all means go subscribe to her. Her channel link is in the description. Thank you all for listening.